Today we're going to examine some of the key challenges of supply chain management and its place in key strategic decisions of a business. Now, in the studio today is Professor Martin Christopher. Now, Martin, you're an Emeritus Professor of Marketing and Logistics, two key important areas. Let's just pick supply chain at the moment. Is it a thing for the top table?
I think it is, and in fact, if we look at what's happening in the boardrooms of many of our businesses here and around the world, I think there's this realization now that the supply chain is critical to business success.
So let's just examine that a bit more. What's changing? Why is it so critical?
I think one of the reasons is that in many cases our supply chains have become extended, significantly more so than was ever the case before. If you think about a traditional supply chain in the past, often it was a vertical supply chain, meaning that the company owned its supply base. You know, we look at Henry Ford I, for instance, a great example. He owned everything, the steel mills, the mahogany forest, the rubber plantations, so he controlled that entire supply chain. Today's supply chains are totally different. You know, we've outsourced, we focus on our core competencies. We're very reliant now upon suppliers who could be on the other side of the globe. And so I think for that reason alone, the realization that this is critical, we have to be able to control this. We may not want to own it, but we want to be in control of it.
So if we look then to the future, you know, away from the old Henry Ford model, what's the future going to look like?
I think the future, well, first of all, it's going to be shaped by this era of turbulence that clearly we've entered into. I mean, the current sort of conditions that we see in the world economy, who can say how long this is going to continue? But, you know, my view is for quite a while yet. So I think our supply chains are going to have to become much more flexible, much more capable of changing rapidly as conditions change, not just on the demand side, but also on the supply side. You know, many resources now are getting scarcer. The costs of commodities, in a lot of cases, as we know, has increased dramatically. And I guess that, you know, as we see the sort of dynamics of world supply and demand change, our supply chains are going to be much better able to change with those conditions.
Can you give me any examples where you can see how that's changing?
Yeah, well, I think, for instance, if we think of what's happening with energy costs, for example, particularly I think in terms of oil and transportation costs. Now, okay, the price of oil, it goes up, it goes down, but the long-term trend, I don't think anybody would dispute the long-term trend is upwards. And for the foreseeable future, most of our transportation, you know, requires petroleum-based products to make it operate. And so the cost of moving things greater distances, you know, I think that's going to become a little bit of a sort of a limitation on our sort of supply arrangements, on our manufacturing locations. There is, I think, going to be a significant sort of reshaping of the supply chain architecture, because the centre of gravity, if you want to think of it in those terms, of supply chains, in some cases, is moving dramatically.
So if you were to leave people with a key message about how the world of supply chain is changing and how that impacts on the business, what would you say?
I would say I think now is the time that we really need to stand back and take a long look at our existing supply chain arrangements and to say, look, these things aren't going to last forever. You know, the conditions we're now in are significantly different from when that supply chain was first put together. And whilst it may be painful, we've got to recognise here that that supply chain may no longer be fit for purpose.
That's a troubling and important message. Thank you very much.
Thank you.